There's a new Five Nights at Freddy's game on the horizon, and it's nothing like the ones before it. With the last game being a quirky spin-off and the one before that being touted as the final chapter, for a while at least, it's a wonder there's a new game at all. And the teasers are showing something new and shiny. Robots of chrome, clowns with plated painted faces that shift and open. And Freddy isn't the leader of the band? Whoa, this is big. And you scour through the teasers. You see the wire clowns, you see the dark rooms, you see the factory, and then you see one. This one. Get back on your stage, now, it reads. Showing only a button in a dark room. But it's not just a button, as you find out when you brighten the picture and ask yourself, what are those? Why, those are the Minireenas. Now there's a plethora of animatronics in Five Nights at Freddy's. We've got gangly clowns, bunny ankle biters, haunted sock monkeys, and a whole lot of bears. There's a whole colorful cast, so a gaggle of tiny dancers fits right in. Yet in the same vein, the Minireenas somehow manage to stand out in a way both creepy and cute. These little dolls were first introduced in Sister Location alongside Ballora as her backup dancers. But since then it has become clear that they're more like her minions than simple side acts. They are to Ballora as the Bitty Babs and Plush Babies are to Circus Baby. But unlike them, the Minireenas have more of a presence. They've appeared more often than either, and while almost always paired with Ballora, their distinct design makes them stand out in a way that the others hadn't. The Bitty Babs and Plush Babies are little versions of Circus Baby, but the Minireenas are distinctly not little Balloras. The Minireenas' designs are based off of wooden art mannequins, the kind that artists pose to use as references. The difference to normal art mannequins being that the Minireenas have large, doll-like white heads, white feet, in some appearances, and little white tutus. Though the tutus are removable, as during Night 4 of Sister Location, they are not wearing them. The inside of the Minireenas' heads are interesting. So in Sister Location, they just look like black spheres on the inside. But upon being jump-scared, you would see little yellow eyes. Now this could have just been an effect from them being haunted, but in the later versions of Minireenas, such as in Fnaf AR, they now have physical eyes. There may be a lore reason for this, but like the puppet's neck not being nearly as giraffe length anymore, I think that this was just a tiny detail that adjusted over time. Speaking of which, it is notable that the Minireenas do resemble the marionette, though there has never been any connection between the two. Though it could be, throwing this out there, since Circus Babies was made to fill the spot that Freddy's left, with Freddy, Bonnie, and Foxy, and their own original characters, the Minireenas might have just been built with some inspiration from the puppet. But this wasn't said anywhere, this is just a possible in-universe explanation. The Minireenas are small, about the size of an actual doll. In comparison, here's one alongside Plush Trap, though he's a little further back. And in Help Wanted 2, they use their bodies to cover the buttons. They are the littlest of babies, but that doesn't make them any less vicious, having the capability to jump scare as early as their Sister Location appearance, though they aren't necessarily what kills you there. Indeed, personality-wise, the Minireenas are almost always accompanying Ballora and assisting her. The few times they aren't, they're still up to mischief, emphasized by their little giggles. Speaking of their voice, I'll just cover this now because there's this weird stop-and-swap situation with a line between them and Bonnet. So in Sister Location's Custom Night, Bonnet gets a line that I am moderately sure was listed as being her in the files, which is her saying, "Take me with you? Take me with you?" Other than that, Bonnet and Minireena share similar giggles. Since then, the line has been attributed to the Minireenas, such as in their short story that I will get to later. And I've heard that it makes a return in Help Wanted 2, but I personally haven't heard it. It's a peculiar situation. The voice does not match the Minireena's giggles, but it also doesn't match Bonnet's. and it's not done by Bonbon's voice actress. How odd. But more of a fun fact than anything else. Many animatronics who don't have canon voices do get awfully chatty in the books, so take that as you will. But let's get into the Minireena's actual history. Like I said, these dolls were revealed in a teaser pre-Sister Location release, and like Innard, received no further hints until the game came out. The first time they are seen is on stage alongside Ballora, posing and bobbing alongside her. Interesting to note, but in the gallery where Ballora and the Minireenas are standing together, it looks like the Minireenas are spelling out the word baby in a YMCA sort of way. It looks like this was intentional. Maybe it's just a little Easter egg. Moving on. The only significant thing they do before Night 4 is the night when Ballora is broken up into pieces and the Minireenas are holding up parts of her on stage. I am not sure why, but for some reason, upon seeing this for the first time, I was slightly creeped out. Even though I'm about 50% sure that this is supposed to be a joke. This, alongside the connection with Ballora, tends to blur the line between whether they are truly Ballora's minions or perhaps a part of her being remotely controlled. This is never really clarified, but I would say more than likely they are sentient but subservient. They have their own personalities, but they are working underneath her. During Night 2, when you are forced to crawl through the Ballora gallery, the Minireenas are not involved, and they do not become a threat until Night 4. Now, Night 4. Now stuck in a spring-locked suit beside a broken Ballora, the Minireenas start climbing the sides and climbing into the mouth of the suit. You have to shake the suit before the Minireenas get to the top of the screen, but not while they're climbing in the mouth, and not enough to unwind the spring locks and while winding the spring locks. Night 4 is a nightmare. And what I said about the Minireenas not being what kills you, they likely aren't. I mean, what can they do? Well, they can trigger the suit, either through scaring you or setting it off themselves. From all we see over the course of this history, it's going to become pretty apparent that the Minireenas are only dangerous because they have the tools to be. They are clever little creatures, but emphasis on the little. The Minireenas can also appear in Michael's house between nights. One can randomly appear beside his television, and another might pop out of your popcorn. Apparently, one can also appear in the control module too. The Minireenas are not shown broken up in the pile of fun-time remains once Innard forms, and like the Bitty Babs, their fate is unknown. In Sister Location Custom Night, the Minireenas return as their own threats in two forms. One group of them tampers with the gas in the next room, and you have to shock them, during which they melt away like a Pac-Man character. Note, I don't think this is lore relevant. The other bundle of minis will pile up on your screen and block the view over the night. There's really nothing you can do about this. They'll just keep crowding in, making it hard for you to see until the night ends, giggling at you, but I didn't have much trouble with them. Basically, you just work around them. Most of the time, the night will end before you're really blinded. The Minireenas appear again in Ultimate Custom Night, where they're up to their same tricks, crowding the screen while you're trying to work. But unlike Sister Location's Custom Night, they'll take off after a while. They're some of the secret animatronics that Dee Dee can summon randomly, so you're unlikely to get them unless you get lucky, or unlucky, or are playing 50-20 mode, in which they'll show up eventually. It's a small showing, but it's nice to see them back, and they return once again alongside Ballora in Fnaf AR Special Delivery, though they are not a collectible animatronic. They're just sidekicks to Ballora. But they do get a skin, funny enough. Ballora's mechanics differ from normal animatronics. She has a noise meter that actually registers your movement, and another that measures how closely you're looking to her, because she's invisible. You have to move slowly and keep from staring at her. That's where the Minireenas come in. They will climb up your screen, which alerts Ballora, so you will have to shake them off, quickly and sparingly as to not tip her off. And eventually she will drop a Minireena, or I suppose you will basically drop the Minireena off your screen. You pick it up, and after you pick up 3, though weirdly enough, I think I saw someone win only picking up 2, Ballora will charge and get shocked, ending the encounter. Here's a render of the broken Minireenas. Poor little things. What's most interesting is that this is where the composition of the Minireenas changed. In Sister Location and Ultimate Custom Night, the Minireenas do look to be mostly made of wood, but in Special Delivery, they are definitely metal, even though they break like glass when knocked off. This is also where their eyes became permanent fixtures. Now, there's two explanations for this, and both I believe, and both I think exist at the same time. The in-universe explanation: these animatronics are replicants built by Fazbear Entertainment to murder dozens of random people for no discernible reason. No, really, think about it, that's exactly what they're doing. But to replicate the Minireenas without having the ability to haunt them into paranormal superpowers, they literally built robo-babies in their image. The meta-narrative could also be that the old designs of the Minireenas were simply upgraded. Like I said, the original Minireenas only had eyes in jump scares and otherwise had a black sphere for a head, but in merch they're often depicted with the yellow eyes. Not always, but often. This mixed with AR's up-close and personal animations means upgrading with actual eyes is likely the only way those eyes could have worked. Either way, it does work. Now, if the Minireenas are side animatronics, how can they get skins? Well, Clockwork Ballora also includes a new skin for the Minireenas. These Clockwork Minireenas have green eyes, slight cracking or texturing on their heads, golden gears at their joints, and a golden gear tutu. Very cute. But weirdly enough, there aren't any special skins for Artic Ballora's Minireenas. A rather small but pretty nice showing for the little bunch of dollies, especially considering that they're not even actual animatronics gameplay-wise. The Minireena's return in Help Wanted is notably smaller. That is, it's not much of a return but a cameo. The Minireenas can appear in the plush trap level, showing up in the hallway as a distraction. It's very small, like with the Biddy Babs, or Biddy Bab. Help Wanted 2, on the other hand, brings them back for a much more significant small role. Now in Help Wanted 2, a few of the Sister Location moments returned as levels, such as Funtime Freddy's Breaker Room section, and the one of more importance to this video, crawling through the Ballora Gallery. In the original Ballora Gallery section, or Night 2 Sister Location, Ballora spins around the gallery and you have to creep through. And like I said earlier, the Minireenas were not involved. Well, that has changed. Now the Minireenas, and Biddy Babs, are in the gallery trying to thwart your passing as Ballora spins and twirls and tries to clothesline you with her extra thick dancer legs. Whereas the Biddy Babs stay off to the side and crawl up for a jump scare if you get too close, the Minireenas plant themselves directly in your way as you're trying to crawl past. They'll be spinning on the dance floor, giggling, alerting Ballora to you being there, and you have to deal with them fast. So, you yeet the babies across the room, which will stir up Ballora, but less than walking up on one of them. At least there's no sickening crack as they hit the ground this time, so you don't feel as bad when they twirl in close and you snatch them up and launch. Sometimes they giggle as you're throwing them. But this isn't the only appearance of the Minireenas, as they also return with Ballora in the Puppet Master level, a level that deceptively has no puppet, I must add. In this level, Ballora's trying to twirl into the office you're huddled up in, and the only way to stop her is to slam that door closed. The only problem? The Minireenas. You may spot them on the monitor, but eventually they will sneak into the office and proceed to pile themselves up on the door and vent buttons. You will again have to yoink them off and possibly yeet them to get them out of the way. Between both of these appearances, I think the Minireenas had a pretty good showing. But I also have some thoughts, and I think it's about time I made my stance clear. Just gotta rip off the band-aid and be upfront about my feelings about the Minireenas. They are adorable. They're just so cute. Like, they were pretty cute clogging up the screen giggling, but oh my god, the whole picking them up like little rag dollies and tossing them, and how they pile up on top of each other like a little tiny bundle. There's something about them that's just so precious, and they're awful, I know, but there's a part of me that's totally charmed by them. And I want one. I want to take one home and dress it up in Barbie clothes and swaddle it in a way that I often also want to swaddle the puppet and Abe from Oddworld. Help Wanted 2 made me feel differently about quite a few characters. I have reignited hope for Baby, the son is now 100% more complex, I like Glamrock Chica a lot more, and now I must have the Minireenas in my life. And the fact that there is not yet a life-size Minireena doll is a crime against nature. I couldn't even find one on Etsy. They're just so cute. I don't know what it is about them. They're just precious little babs. The little one that sticks its head out from the popcorn bowl is just so cute. I can't get over that. That tangent aside, though on a smaller side, this is a great showing for the Minireenas. Not only do they live up to their cute but mischievous shtick, but this edition has gone further in showing how they work with Ballora in her best interest. In other appearances, they mostly just climb up you, but here they block your way and block your buttons just to assist her. It shows a much closer, I don't want to say bond because we don't see any sort of emotional relation, but we know directly that they are working for her or in her benefit. Or, I wonder, in a neat twist, I wonder if Ballora is sort of the subservient one. This just came to me, but you know, all of the fun times are sort of subservient to Baby. Imagine if Ballora was actually the sort of subservient brute who's just wanting to attack you, and the Minireenas are the little brains directing her towards you. That would be neat. No evidence of this, but that would be neat. But it does at least clarify that they are willing to do more, and that when it narrows down to it, they won't attack directly and will instead set you up for Ballora to attack. Likely because they're not terribly threatening. Well, that covers the games. Let's move on to the books, or book. The Minireenas have their own story in the third book, 1:35 a.m., yes, that's the name of the book, called Room for One More. Let's get into it. Stanley is the down-on-his-luck character type and is forced to take a job with what seems to be Afton Robotics but is never directly stated to be, being an underground facility. He's been working there for a while before the events of the story and often spends most of his shift sleeping. His job is to make sure nothing gets out, so I am blaming him personally for Circus Baby making off with Michael's skin suit. But one night he meets a Minireena, who he has never seen before, and it talks. It seems friendly, it even asks him to take it home, and he considers it before going back to sleep. I think Stanley might have some undiagnosed narcolepsy. Anyway, this is when he starts having weird dreams. The story stretches out for a few days and nights, and every night Stanley passes out at his desk and has a weird dream. And yes, if you have ever heard of it, this is the origin of the Funtime Foxy taxi driver scene. It was one of these dream sequences. And I think this might have also been the place where Ballora's was described wrong, as the last dream involves her at a dentist's office, with Ballora as a nurse and a massive Minireena dentist. So we can chalk this one up to Stanley not recognizing the puppet, I assume. But after his first dream, he wakes up to find the doll gone, his arm swollen, and his throat hurting. This happens again the next night. Yes, he sees another doll, and yes, he falls asleep again. Doll disappears, arm gets swollen, other arm this time, and he's coughing up blood. This happens for a while. We learn about his ex-girlfriend and his sister, his fear of hospitals, a lot of that, you know, Faz filler. The last night he wakes up from the dentist's dream to a Minireena trying to climb in his mouth. Oh, now he wakes up. So the cat's out of the bag. Stanley's been swallowing the Minireenas and they've been living in his body. This is a disturbing realization and some pretty creepy body horror. And unfortunately, as someone who love-hates body horror and is pretty aware of human anatomy, I don't think this will be a huge surprise when I say that the situation here is pretty impossible. So let's get into that. The Minireenas are climbing into Stanley's body down his throat. His swelling in his arms signal that they have climbed into different parts of his body. Now technically you could implant a foreign object into your body and survive for a while depending on where it is and what the composition of the object is. Your body's not going to like it, especially something this big. Infection chances likely, sepsis is on the table. The problem here is that this means the Minireenas will have to tear out through the esophagus, likely beneath the windpipe as he's still breathing. So what's the issue? Can't eat, can't drink. He does complain of throat pain. Throat tears can happen. There's only one problem. You know what else travels through the esophagus other than food, drink, and oxygen? Blood. And a lot of it. Yes, they say he's bleeding in the story, but he's not bleeding enough. a tear of the magnitude required to get through that esophagus would severely damage many blood vessels. Stanley would bleed out into himself and die, likely after the first wound, as I don't think the Minireenas are sealing their passage in. And I totally forgot to mention the aorta. That would be a killer. Just even the slightest nick of that would probably be a killer in this situation. This isn't a problem in a kid's story because kids won't know. This is just kind of something that takes anyone out of it who knows significantly about how the body works. Anyone who's taken biology in school. TLDR, if you're into Saul, you'll probably know enough about human anatomy to know that this setup doesn't work. But if you don't, it's pretty effective. But I gotta admit, I am impressed about the detail here, because this story was obviously inspired by someone who saw Night 4 and saw how it looks like the Minireenas crawl into your mouth, even though it's the mouth of the suit. Many of the Fazbear Fright stories are Goosebumps stories with a phony Fnaf paint job, especially in the later books. But this is an actual Fnaf story inspired by something in Fnaf that you would only know by looking at the games, and it uses the Minireenas to their advantage as being small but menacing little demon dolls. So, I've got to give kudos to that, because I give Fazbear Frights a lot of flack, but to have a story that's actually a Five Nights at Freddy's story, that's pretty good. Anyway, the story kinda ends after that. Stanley tries to escape, but between the excessive swelling and his interrupted nap, he collapses as the last Minireena comes sprinting in to dive into his gaped, screaming mouth. Then the story ends. Assumedly, Stanley choked on the last one. Or it was like that scene in The Critic where the pigeon flies into his boss's mouth and he swallows it whole because it was lured by the sound of his voice. Same vibe. Like I said earlier, this is one of the better Fazbear Fright stories. There's a lot of plot pushing, like Stanley knows something's off, and yet he still continuously naps on the job, for one. But I have to give it credit that it is a FNAF story. It's an actual FNAF story, and that's worth a lot when it comes to these books. Well, with that done, we've arrived at the end of the Minireena's story. And what have we discovered? Well, these little dolls are adorable, but also horrible and horribly mischievous and devious, which means they fit right in. Will they return again? Oh yeah, probably. Will it be a big role? Probably not. Would I like to see more of them? Of course, they're precious. Should they get a life-size hex doll that looks just like them except it's life-size? Absolutely, 10 out of 10. Would pay for it in a heartbeat. Are they really the masterminds behind Ballora and she's just a brainless body going along with whatever they say? And they probably crawl inside of her and hide during the day if the story is true? Actually, if we're taking the books as canon, then that would maybe suggest that the Minireenas hide inside of Ballora. In fact, maybe that's how they got into the scooping room. Well, that was sort of a disturbing train of thought that I didn't think I was going to discover today. Needless to say, this is entirely off script, but I digress again. I do hope we see them again, and I do think in a way, and it's not just because I find them cute, I find these little dolls pretty special, both in the fact that they're very cute and the fact that they're still effective villains in what they do. Even with their limitations, they still leave a big impact. And that is where I'm going to leave you today. Thank you for watching.